Hi guys, welcome back. I've been dealing with depression most of my adult life, and normally it really doesn't bother me that much. I do what I'm supposed to, keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually it passes. But for the past couple weeks, I've been feeling down, and it's really had me worried because I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong. Finally this week, while I was out walking in the beautiful fall leaves with my dog, it hit me. Last year, about this time, is when I was saying my final goodbye to my baby sister, Tanya. And when I realized that, I came home and had a good cry. Sometimes we need that. Because of where I've been really stressed trying to figure out what I wanted to talk to you guys about this week. I don't want to come on here and dump my depression on you guys because you all have problems of your own. But I want to be real here. So I did some research on how to get through grief. While I was doing that, I realized that some of the stuff I found could be useful to some of you guys too. An EEOC fight can be emotionally draining. We feel alone, out of control, and uncertain about the future. And because it's so intense and time-consuming, we don't always have the time or energy that we used to spend on things like hobbies or relationships. Discrimination costs us a lot, and at times, all that loss is bound to spill over into grief. Now, the grief that goes with this process is different than the grief that we go through when we lose a loved one. Of course. But we still go through the 5 stages of grief. There's denial. In the early stages of this process, we all want to believe that our employer is going to do the right thing and stop the discrimination. And when they don't, the anger comes. And there's a lot to be angry about in this process. Our perpetrators, the system, and sometimes even our own attorneys. There's bargaining, and in our case, the bargaining is literal. There were many, many days when I felt like I would do just about anything to put this behind me and get my life back. When we realize that's not possible, the depression comes. And that can spill over into a painful type of self-reflection where we second-guess all our choices and think about all the things we could have or should have done. And finally, there's acceptance, as we realize that if we want to move on and write a new chapter in our lives, first we have to close this one. And these stages aren't static. We bounce back and forth between them until we find a way to move on. This week I found a lot of suggestions for moving on from grief as quickly as possible. And I realized that as I was going through the process, I used pretty much all of these. They're all a part of what I call healthy selfishness. Healthy selfishness starts with self-care. Now, when we think about self-care, a lot of us think about things like taking a bubble bath or getting a massage or buying ourselves something nice. And all that stuff can be really helpful. But self-care is also about the things we do for ourselves every day. Literally, taking care of ourselves. Physically, by feeding our body the nutrients it needs, getting some gentle movement and some quiet time every day, and going to bed early if we have to be sure that we can get enough sleep in spite of the insomnia. Socially, this fight gets lonely, so things like having a therapist, online forums, even conversations with relative strangers like the cashier at the grocery store can mean a lot when you feel isolated for 8 hours a day at work. Spiritually, when we feel out of control, having a religious or a spiritual practice can help us feel grounded. For me, it's being out in nature. That makes me feel at peace with the world. Emotionally, for me, a lot of this was about the little things. A warm bath before bed, a soft pair of jammies, and watching things on TV and being around people who made me laugh and feel uplifted. And I cared for myself financially by cutting back on some of the spending that I didn't have to do and finding things to do for myself other than retail therapy. All these aspects of self-care intersect and affect each other, so the more of them we tend to, the better we feel. Another aspect of healthy selfishness is self-talk. The things we say in our head. Being kind and compassionate to ourselves can feed a sense of self-worth and remind us that we deserve better than we're getting at work right now. We all deserve to have our rights respected. And sometimes healthy selfishness is about expressing ourselves to others, especially at work where it can help us document our case as well as feel better. Our employers do a lot of harmful things to us that we feel like we have to accept sometimes, but we don't always. We have to be professional and polite, but it's okay to express our reasonable concerns and ask questions, preferably in writing. I've talked about how to do that in a lot of other videos, and rather than go through that again here, I'll just put some links in the description so you guys can refresh your memory if you want. So this week's message is sometimes it's okay to be a little selfish, especially when we're dealing with all the losses that can go with this process. I am not a hotshot rocket scientist anymore, and I'll never be one again. But that isn't the end of my story. In giving up who I was, I became who I am, and I'm okay with that change. And this week, as I'm coming to terms with the fact that my baby sister is gone and she's not coming back, I have to remind myself that this isn't the end of my story either. Life goes on. You just got to keep hanging in. So I'll see you guys next time, hopefully with a little more uplifting message. Till then, you guys take care and hang in.